We have another great duo ready for you to talk about fashion, technology, and youth culture. Katrien Zwartenbroeks is a journalist, and she's also the online editor-in-chief for Belgian magazine Knak Weekend. The website tries to dig deep into the world of fashion, food reporting, and beauty. And they bring special reports, analysis, and background pieces. Katrien will be interviewing Dirk Schönberger, creative director at Adidas. Dirk was one of the people who came up with the idea of collaborations with Raf Simons and Pharrell Williams, and he was also one of the key players supporting the relaunch of an iconic sneaker, and I'm sure there are quite a few pairs of those sneakers here today present in the public. So let's have a listen to Katrien Zwartenbroeks and Dirk Schönberger.
Hi, everyone. Okay, this thing is
Hello.
on. Hi. As Kirsten already mentioned, you are one of the people responsible for a relaunch so viral it affected almost everyone, I think, the Stan Smith sneaker. Can you explain the incentives behind that relaunch? Why that sneaker? Why then?
Well, I mean, it definitely was a risk at that time because it was one of our best-selling sneakers. It was, we sell millions of the Stan Smith,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's so iconic that you want to protect it as well. And we felt at that time people started to get a little bit tired of it. So we took, of course at Adidas, not one person takes the decision. It's a group of people that took the decision to take it off the market.
Can we talk timelines? What time was it?
What
like
time
a
is
date?
it? Well, I think it was, I joined Adidas in 2010, so I think it was 11, 12 when we took the decision to take it off the market. And really come back then and build it up again as something really precious, which it is. I mean, it's probably one of the most copied iconic sneakers because of its design language and its longevity and popularity.
Yeah. Yeah, but I can imagine it's difficult to walk a line between a design that is iconic and something that becomes a bit bland, a bit every day. How do you manage that?
Well, I mean, what we did is really to reposition it in the beginning price-wise. We looked into collaborations, how we could relaunch it with some really high-level people, and of course, luckily, very much at the same time. We started also the conversations with Raf, and he is a big fan of the Stan Smith. So it was, it all came at a very good time for us as a brand, and it was pretty strategic, I have to say. It was very unusual for me as a designer who works very impulsive to take those strategic steps.
Yeah, and is it the same strategy that you apply to the whole company? Because you're lauded everywhere as the man who took on the competition with Nike and has put Adidas back on the market again. And
again, it's a group of people.
Yeah,
it's not one person in such a big brand. But I think what I thought when I arrived at the brand, I saw an amazing potential. Adidas was already very strong in the lifestyle sportswear side, and I thought that we could become even bigger when we would look into making new products, but also with the heart and the DNA of the past. So we started working on some projects like the NMD sneaker, that it has a lot of cues from the past of the brand, but it's a completely new shoe with technology, with the knit uppers and with the boost foam, etc., etc. So it was something very true to the history, but also looking forward. And that, from my feeling at that point when I joined, Originals was very heritage and very true to the past. And we all took a big effort to push it further.
Yeah, you really implemented it in contemporary culture again, and it's really interesting to see that.
Yeah.
And I think it was also at the right time because sportswear and it really became fashionable again. And how do you think sportswear and streetwear has redefined the notion of what is fashion and what is stylish? And
well, I mean, I think it's a longer story. When you look back to the 80s, when Run DMC were wearing Superstars and the three-stripe tracksuit, and when you then also see with techno culture where the way we dress changed completely, and it slowly started to influence the way we dress every day. Also, of course, it always starts with youth, and it always starts with a movement within youth. But then also, if you look today how people go to the office, they don't dress the same way anymore as they used to in the 80s or even in the 90s. So I felt like it was sport and sportswear had such a big influence on fashion for a very long time. And I think it was just a logic development that a brand like Adidas or other sports brand would look into that. So I think it became pretty normal that sport is in our daily life now.
yeah, I think 15 years ago we couldn't have imagined sitting here in a suit with sneakers underneath it instead of high heels or something like that. But I think it's also about fashion becoming more and more democratic, about fashion being about the people more and more than it used to be, maybe?
I don't know. If fashion, yeah, of course. I mean, you could say fashion became more democratic when fashion became embraced by vertical companies like Zara and H&M. Of course, it became more disposable, and it became also much more democratic. Sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, the thing is with Adidas, it's always been a pretty democratic brand. Our products are not high fashion priced products. There are some, but the majority is pretty democratic and accessible.
Is that one of the key components of Adidas? Is that something you really want to maintain, even when you launch collaborations with, for example, Raf Simons, etc.?
Well, I think that the collaborations that we have, that they are influencing the rest of the brand. We bring people into the brand also to inject something that hasn't been there before, to ask, in a certain way, to ask a question that we didn't ask ourselves. So, and all these people that they have been influencing our brand in an amazing way. Raf and Rick Owens, and definitely also Kanye West and Pharrell, but also Yohji Yamamoto, which we work with for 17 years now. So I think it's always been very interesting to see when those people come to challenge us. And so you definitely see some of their ideas trickle down into much more mass market collections of ours.
Yeah, you once described it as the collaborators being like a virus into your company. I love that.
Yeah, I avoid to say that because within the company they didn't like it so much when I said that. So I'm not saying virus.
I'm going to another quote of yours. I don't like to create trends, I create movements.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, if you work for a brand like Adidas and you need to look at what is a trend and you start building products around it, it's too late. You need to, the size of Adidas alone allows us to create something that people will appreciate and embrace. So I never liked trends because, again, as I say, when it's there, it's for me, it's already over.
Yeah.
And for me, a movement is a much more complex thing. I mean, it's the influence of what's going on politically, what's going on socially in the world, and then like really the things that inspire almost every designer: music, fashion, art, literature, cinema, everything. So for me, a movement is something that is much more sensitive and goes much deeper than just a trend that's moving ahead. And you can build on a movement much more long-term, a strategy or like a design language.
Yeah. It's almost like selling an identity, I feel. Like, is that the reason why young people are buying into big brands again? Because normally they go look for indie labels, and they still do that, but you notice a shift into the big brands, the big logos being popular again. Is it because they adapted the strategy of selling the movement, the identity?
I think in the first place, they are buying into something they believe in, trust. But on the other hand, we also need to see that they are not as loyal as they used to be. When I was a kid, there were a few brands that I loved, and I wanted to wear them, and I was always sticking to those brands. Today, you need to always be relevant for them. I think that's the major. It's not only about a logo, but what this logo stands for, and it's not only a visual language. Very often, when we talk to young kids and ask them like, "What's going on in your life?" they're also looking into how we produce. They look at really sustainability and how we even treat our workforces. That are really topics that are pretty amazing when you talk to the kids.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for a big brand, the ethical DNA has become almost as important as the aesthetical DNA. That's also what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, what we did is a few years ago we started to work with Parley for the Oceans.
Yeah.
It's an organization that is looking into plastic floating in the oceans, and I'm sure that every one of you has seen already videos and images. It's amazing how big, it's almost big as countries, what's floating in the oceans. And we started a cooperation with them to start collecting plastic bottles from the water, but also from beaches. And we started making shoes. So we recycled the material and started making shoes from that. And that's actually only the peak of the iceberg that we work on. Because I mean, we are a company that is producing so many things every single year. We have a pretty big responsibility, and we also take it on to do something about what happens after you stop wearing your product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I notice is that a lot of brands are buying into that now, about being sustainable, about being fair to the workforce, and it almost feels like only established brands can afford to look into how their product is made instead of how many of their product is made, how much of their product is made. So I think that's maybe a pity to.
Well, I mean, I think it's our responsibility is much bigger, and I think that almost every brand can produce in a sustainable way today. I mean, sustainability is also to look where if you can produce more locally than globally, ship products around. I mean, we are at this point we are testing something, a Speed Factory. It's called Speed Factory.
Yeah.
And we want to return and build factories that are more automatic, and we can produce products again more locally. without shipping them, putting them on a plane or a boat with a high carbon footprint. So we want to go back and produce a little bit more, or we want to produce more intelligent.
Yeah, and shorten the supply chain.
Shorten the supply chain, also be able to customize product to your needs, to your if you want a different color, we can do it then, and it's there in a much shorter time.
For clarification, the Speed Factory, it works with robots. It's
Not
3D
only.
printing, or how does it work?
There is. We have a lot of plans with the Speed Factory. Right now, it's really there is a lot of automatic work. That's for sure. But there's always still we always, of course, still have humans working on products. But we are able then to reduce the production costs so far that we are able to produce them again in Europe, in Germany. We have one in Germany. We will build one in the US. So it's a test right now, because automation in production is not so easy with a complex product like
how does it
shoe.
influence like form and function of, for example, a sneaker when you abandon the manual labor, when you do it by machine?
Well, we need to design the sneaker according to what's possible with the machines. At the same time, we of course need to build a sneaker that is so highly functional that a runner gets the support and gets the function of a running shoe. So it's a different way of looking at designing products. You cannot just add and more and more and more and make it more complex. You need to reduce.
Yeah, it's called Speed Factory. Is being fast the biggest challenge of a? Well, I'm going to call you a fashion company because it's Fashion Talks. Is it one of the biggest challenges right now, and how are you solving it with Speed Factory?
So first of all, we are not a fashion company. We are a sport company.
I know.
Our CEO would really disagree now. No, we are a sport company, and I think that our first aim is to build the best product we can for athletes, for kids on the street that want to go out, want to look cool. That's our primary goal. Speed is definitely something that put a lot of pressure on us when you look at verticals who can deliver pretty quickly. But it cannot be our only driver. We want to be faster to bring the products to the consumers, but not on the risk of making a worse product.
Yeah.
That's why we started the Speed Factory, because that will empower us to make a high quality, high standard product and still be faster.
But you said you don't like trends or following trends, but with Speed Factory, aren't you playing into the cards of the trends? Because when like a sneaker model is popular, Speed Factory allows you to produce much quicker those sneakers.
Well, yeah. No, we don't, because the development of one of our sneakers takes a long time. Mm-hmm. So to make it work, so that if you run in a shoe, there are so many aspects that it's stable, stabilizing your foot. We need to test them. Very often, developments of our shoes take 2 or 3 years until they're ready for the market. So you wouldn't really call that speed.
No, but when the product is launched and you see that it's doing well in the sneaker shops, then when the sneaker shop owner wants to order more sneakers, they normally have to wait a long time because the supply chain is like this. But with Speed Factory, when you produce locally, you can push much faster.
Sure, it's a great opportunity.
Okay. It's feeding the trends, though.
No, I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. Since you don't like trends, and you told me before we went on stage, I don't like the question, what's next? So for my final question, I'm going to ask you what's done, what's in the past, what's something you hope fashion designers, fashion brands will retire from? What's something you hope we don't see as much of in the future?
Well, I mean, that is really a difficult question to answer. I mean, what I'm looking at is what's happening in the world of our consumers, and I'm very interested in what music they listen to, etc., etc. So, I mean, honestly, I mean, I'm very much from the fashion world. I did what I wanted to do when I had my own brand. I did what I wanted to do. I thought that was the right thing to do. I think now, with my experience at Adidas, I learned a lot. I get a much deeper understanding, of course, because I'm not so niche and focused. So, and honestly, when I didn't like trends when I had my own brand, I really think we need to watch out for social trends, but societal trends more than anything else. You know, I don't think that a surface or just like a pretty color will be an answer for anything. So I still reject to talk about what's next. I could, if I was allowed to, talk about what we are doing next, but I can't.
No.
Yeah, I only have to say, like, I don't know what happens next in fashion. I don't know what happens next in the world. No one of us would have thought that the world changes the way politically how it did in the past 2 years. And so I think that we really need to get into a helicopter and see a much bigger picture, and also try maybe not to move that fast anymore, and try to be like so ahead of ourselves in a way, and stay a little bit calmer and take a little bit more wise decisions.
And be more in the middle of everything that's happening.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.